So this session is about Json, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Basically, Json is objects which are used for transmitting values, data from one server to the client, from server to the client, from server to the server. And it is also language independent. It is a text format which is used to transmit information from one position, one place to another. Usually it is kept on the server and the clients access these APIs. These are basically URIs, URL from where we get the data. So in this session, we'll be first going through some terminologies and some concepts which are important to understand regarding JSON, and then we'll see how to use it in our program. So let's begin. JSON is an object standard format for data interchange that uses readable text to store and transmit data object. This is very technical definition. Java is language independent, JSON is language independent, and web services and APIs use JSON format to provide public data. These are public data which can be used and accessed in different positions, different places. So JSON is a standard format for data interchange, and it is used to transmit data in the form of objects, and web services and APIs use JSON format to provide public data. JSON is used for storing and transporting data. Both purposes solved. It also stores and it also helps in transferring of information. JSON is used when data is sent from a server to a web page, and JSON is readable and easy to understand both by the human as well as the machine. It is used while writing JavaScript-based applications that includes browser extensions and websites. Now, JavaScript objects, JSON syntax is derived from JavaScript object notation. We have already discussed JavaScript objects and arrays, and same concepts are used in JSON as well. So with JavaScript, we can create an object and assign data to it like this. Suppose we have person equals to name colon Raj, comma, age colon 31, comma, city colon Delhi. So in JSON, values are stored in a name value pair. So first is name and the value is Raj. Second name is age and the value is 31. Third name is city and the value is Delhi. So always in JSON, data is stored in the form of name value pair. It will always be a name and a value separated by comma if there are more name and values. So in this person object or in this person, we can see that there are three values: name, age, and city that is stored in person. And if we write person dot name, it will return Raja. It will like write person dot age, it will print 31. If we write person dot city, it will print Delhi. It can also be accessed like array person, and in bracket we can type name, person, age, person, city. The value will be Raja 31 Delhi. How this will be used, we'll see with example. A common use of JSON is to exchange data to and from a web server. Data is always received from web server in the form of a string. So whenever we transmit information from server to client or from one web page to a server, the data is transferred in the form of a string. So JSON.pass function is used to convert the string value into the JavaScript object. Like whenever we enter something in a text box, it is treated as a text, and we want to perform some numeric calculation like plus minus, we use parse function, parse int to convert it into int, parse float to convert it into float. Similarly, Similarly, when we transmit data from server, the data is transferred in the form of it is in the form of a string. So JSON.parse function is used to convert that string value into an object notation. So from server, suppose data is coming in the form of name colon Raj, and this is in the form of a string. So we have to use JSON.parse. So when we use JSON.parse for the same value, it will become an object, and then it can be used with the JavaScript object notations. How these are very technical things, but we have to understand this, and then we can move with example. Another function that will be commonly used is called JSON.stringify. We'll come back. Yes. JSON.stringify is it performs the opposite function. When we are sending information to the server, when we are sending information that is in the form of object, we have to first convert it into a string. And that is done with the help of a stringify function. So a stringify function performs just opposite work of the parse function. Parse function converts a string to objects, and stringify converts objects to a string. So whenever data is coming to us in our program, in our web page, we require Java JSON.parse, and when we are sending information from our web page, then we will use JSON.stringify. And this is how the API works. You can see we have a browser. We send request to the API. From the API, it goes to the server. The server can have the value in database, so it will take the values from database and it will return via API and internet to the browser. So in our browser, we send a request. That request goes to the server through the API, and then the server takes the value from the database. It returns to the server through the API to the browser. Now, why do we require this API? Because suppose we are writing program in JavaScript, maybe our program is in Java, maybe our program is any other language, and the server, we don't know in which language the server is running its server-side programs. So we want some standard format which both the sides will understand. The browser will also understand the programs which are on the client side. Like usually in the client side, it is JavaScript, and usually in the server side, the programs are written either in PHP or in JSP or in ASP. So those informations which are written in the server side programs are different from those which are written in the client side programs. JavaScript is a client side. So we need a standard notation which is understood by both the sides. So what we do, we put our requirement in a standard form, in the standard form to the API, and the API takes that data from the server in the standard form and returns to us. So that is the basic requirement of API. Why we require API. Now, this is one example of an API. It is type.fit API codes. This is an API which returns a lot of codes, very powerful codes by different authors. So it is in again in the name value pair. So you can see the first code, the text is, the quote is genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, and the author is Thomas Edison. Similarly, the second values is you can observe a lot just by watching. This is Yogi Berra. Then a house divided against itself cannot stand. So these are all values which are coming through this API. Now, suppose we want to use these codes in our program. So how do we do it? That we will see uh, in this session in the program. Let us move back once again. What is JSON? Let's recap quickly. JSON is JavaScript object notation. This is very technical definition. JSON is open standard format. Open standard format. Open means we can edit it. Anyone can have access to it. And it is used for data interchange. You can see in the logo that is on the left side, it is in the bracket, there is a semicolon. So it has to be two value, name and value information. JSON is used for storing as well as transferring data. JSON is used when data is sent from server to the web page. JSON is readable and easy to understand by human as well as machine. Now, JavaScript objects are in this format. Person equals to name value pair, name Raj, age 31. It always has to be a name value pair. That is important to be noted. Whenever we are using JSON, it has to be the value has to be in the name value pair. The name separated by colon, then the value. Name separated by colon, then the value, and two values, two name value pair are separated by comma. This is the syntax. Now we have two important functions, although there are many other functions that we'll see as we explore JSON and APIs. But the two functions are always used. One is parse function. Parse function converts the string to JavaScript object. Why this is required? Because the data is being transferred in the form of a string, in the form of sequence of character, and before we use it, it has to be converted into object notation. So we use parse, and just opposite of it is a stringify. It converts an object into a string, and this is how the API works. From our browser, we request an API. The API contacts the server, gets the data, maybe from the database, and return it to the browser. This is one example of API that we will be looking in our example. We have type.fit API codes. This is an API which returns a number of powerful codes by different author. So let's come to the browser where we'll be discussing some more live examples. So let me show you. So this is the browser. You can see type.fit API codes, and these are the codes. So this is the API. Anyone can use this API. And when we use this API, it returns codes. Now we want to access this codes and print it in our program. So I have written a program. This very simple program. Whenever I click the show button, it prints the quotation as well as the author. Then again, it is printing the next quotation, like in our previous example of online test. Whenever we click the button, the next question is coming. So here the next quote is coming. How it is happening from this. The quotes are coming from this API, and how this is happening, we'll see it in the program. Now, suppose we want to implement the same thing in online test application, then what we will do, we'll create our own API, and that API will contain questions as well as the options in this format as it is shown here for codes. I've taken this example because this is very simple. Only two values are there, text and author. In our example of online application, there will be question, then there will be 4 options to each question, then there will be the correct answer. So 5 or 6 information will be required. That will be a bit more complex. So this is the easiest API that we can use in our program. Now coming to the code. So I've already written it so that it will take less time. I'll explain this. First, come to the body part. In this body part, we have a div. This div display codes here is written already, and there is a button, and when this button is clicked, we call display codes. And here is a display codes function. This display codes prints the code taking from the API. Now I'll explain that, but I'll show you here. This is the output of the program. When we run the program, this is how it is looking. Why? Because display codes here is written in the div, and then there is a button. You can see display codes here is written, and then there's a button. Now, whenever the button is clicked, display codes function is called, and here everything is new. So you have to concentrate properly, thoroughly, so that you understand it. This fetch is called a promise. And what is a promise? Promise is usually used to perform an action only when certain thing has been done. So what is being happening here? यहाँ पर देखिए, यहाँ पर we are using this the same very API. API are usually the URLs. So you can see in the browser, this is the API. So this is the API that I have written in this code. In the fetch, we are writing this API, and when this fetch will take all the values from that API, all the codes with the author, and if it is received, then this part will be performed. Like in if else, if the condition is true, then the true part is performed, otherwise false part is performed. Here it is like when this act this action is performed only when the fetch value is true. If the fetch is not happening, then what will happen? It will not go to the then part. Then part is only executed when the fetch is true, when the fetch has happened, when the data has been fetched from the API, then this part will come. Now here what we have to do, all the codes will come and get stored in this variable data. All the codes will come and stored in this data. This is in the form of an array, and in array, the first member will be at 0 position. So we have an index variable here already written. You can see I is 0. So data 0, that means the first quote, and then we are using a BR, and then data 0, the author. So this will take out the first quote from the data. And what is data? Data is all the codes from this API. All the output that you can see on the screen, this goes and get stored here in this data once the fetch happens. If the fetch will not happen, then there will be some error. How that error will be resolved, we'll see later on. I have written the smallest part of fetch so that we can only concentrate how we receive data from the API into our program and how we use it in our program through JavaScript. So all the values of the API are stored in data in the form of array. So the first quote will be in position 0. It will have two values, the text and the author. So both the text and the author are being displayed, and in between we have a BR. Now suppose we don't need BR, we can give a comma so that it comes in the same line. And now if we make it live, you can see it will come in the same line. So I'm clicking here. So genius in 1%, inspiration 90% perspiration. From where it is coming? It is coming from this. This is the at position 0. Next, this is at position 1. So what we are doing, as soon as the data is printed, we are incrementing the value of I. So the next time when the button is clicked, display codes will be called, the value of I will be 1. So the data will print the next value, that is at position 1. So let us see the output. See here, every time it is coming in this way. Now, if we want to decorate it, we can make it we can add some CSS to it. Let us do it quickly so that it looks good. I'll use style and dot. I'll use it width. Width is 400 pixels. color is background color. Background color is risk. Order is those pixels. Margin pixel from the top and then in the center. And there was also padding. And we'll use this and this div, or rather take div class equals to and so let's see. This is how it is coming. Display posts here show this way. We can have some more in between these two. There should be some gap. So I'll use margin with the button, or I can use margin with the div. So I'll do what this button has a class equals to as margin dot and pixels. Yes. And let's make the body font. So now let us see the output. Showing this one. Button is not looking good. Just make the button more good. Stem pixels and suppose also gives the right pixels and width is 100 pixels for the and now let us see how it looks better. So this is how it looks. So what is happening now? Once again, let's come to the first of all, we have an API. This is a public API. Anyone can use it. So this API is basically a URL which provides us some information in the form of JSON. So this is providing us some information in the form of JSON. How this value will be accepted in JavaScript. For that, we have written this part of the program. Fetch. This fetch everything from this API and store it in this data variable. This data is basically an array, and from that array we can print one by one, or if we want to print all of them, we can print all of them using loop. But we are concentrated here so to print one by one, because ultimately we have to create our own API that will store all the questions and answers and options, and then we have to move from one question to another. So here also we are concentrated only on one quotes display, starting the value with 0. So we need an index at line number 9. We have declared an index, and the same index is being stored here. If we want the quotes and author in separate line, we can use BR to break the line. We can use different div. So a lot of ways we can handle this situation. So in this session, what we have learned, we have first learned what is JSON, and then we have learned how will the JSON values will be brought in from the server to our program, and then how we can display it properly in our web browser.